Namaste, everyone. Okay, so this will be a Vedic astrology video, but also more of a yogic philosophy and just education on yoga and Hinduism overall type of video. This video is about the Shad Darshana, the 6 ways of viewing reality. So you've all heard of yoga, and many of you have heard of Vedanta, but those are only 2 of the 6 different ways of seeing the truth in Hinduism. So I wanted to talk about these others because this is just something that there's very little info about online, and these 6 these Shad Darshanas were a big part of classical Hinduism and are still a big part of the authentic yogic path. And if you learn about these 6 philosophies, of course, as a jyotishi, as part of the jyotish course that I'm teaching, I think I'll make this video public too, because I want the public to know more about this. But I'm going to, of course, give you guys some insights on this from the Vedic astrology angle. And you'll see how this can actually inform your whole way of thinking about life and seeing the truth of life. So yeah, first off, it's really cool just to start on like a bigger picture, since we should acknowledge that it's really cool that, Vedic culture and yogic culture was not really trying to make everyone see everything the same way. Right away, they were seeing how there are different temperaments and mentalities that each person has. And so they're going to see the truth and reality from a different perspective, and they're not wrong. It's like seeing a beautiful diamond from different angles of its shape, and that's the same way of seeing all the different gods, like the Trimurti. Shiva, turn the diamond a bit, and then you're going to see Vishnu, then turn again, then you're going to see Brahma, but it's all the same thing. So let's just dive into this a bit. So of course, Shad means 6, so that's the word for 6. And there's also Shad Vargas. For us Vedic astrologers, there's the Shad Vargas, the 6 important Vargas that are oftentimes referred to in classical texts. So like I think in the modern era, we should look at all the Vargas because we have software to do this. But in the older days, you didn't really have maybe time to calculate out all these things when you're looking at a chart. So you would look quickly at a planet in the Shad Vargas. So you would look at, say you wanted to know about a person, if they're going to get married or what their wife would be like. You would look at Venus in not just the D1 chart, the Rashi chart, but 5 other Varga charts. The D2, the D3, the D9, the D12, and the D30 actually. And that was the Shad Vargas. I've got 2 Varga classes up on the Patreon, like much more in depth if you're wanting to learn about Vargas. All right, but so you got there's also Shad Varga in Vastu as well, just so you know. There's a type of classification there in Vastu. So Shad means 6, and then Darshan is a really cool word. It's related to the same word drishti, which in Vedic astrology, we know drishti means an aspect. People even, in yoga classes will try to, show off their Sanskrit knowledge by using the word drishti, like cast your drishti to the wall, or you know what I mean, or whatever. It just means your gaze or your glance, you're seeing. So darshan or darshana is the act of seeing, the act of viewing. And so these are 6 ways of viewing reality, but darshana means a philosophy. So there's the 6 philosophies, because a philosophy is a way you view life. And so this word is just really important. I want all my students, especially Westerners, to know this word darshana because it comes up a lot. Like you could go to a guru and take darshan of this guru, just viewing, just seeing the truth in this guru. But it's also like a pun because it means like seeing their philosophy as well. So taking darshan of a Ganesh Murti, it's like you're seeing the truth in the form of Ganesh, but you're also taking in its philosophy. Okay, so this is the Yoga Darshana that you're taking when you're taking my course. You're getting an initiation, a diksha into Yoga Darshana and Jyotish Darshana. These are 6 ways of loving the truth. Now, what are the 6 ways? So you have Sankhya philosophy. First off, there are 3 that are external ways of viewing the external reality more so. And then there are 3 that are focused more on internal truth and internal reality. So, what are these 6 philosophies? Sankhya philosophy. This is the philosophy of how everything was manifested. Okay? And actually, I'm going to go through all 6 of them and then go back and go into them in depth. So there's Sankhya. Then there's Nyaya philosophy. The Nyayikas were basically logicians. It actually just means logic and seeing everything through logic. Then there was the Vaisheshika, which were actually this and the Nyaya, the Nyaya philosophy, these were the original sciences of the planet. And the Vaisheshikas were the original scientists of the planet, at least as far as we know historically. And the Vaisheshika is basically just like actually the original form of physics, where it's just studying physics and reality and what the substances are in reality and just kind of categorizing them and being very methodical about it. So those are the 3 ways of seeing the outer reality, how everything grew, logically understanding it and how to think about it, and then understanding the things themselves. So Vaisheshika, Nyaya, and Sankhya. Then you have the internal ways of seeing truth, which is Yoga, Vedanta, and Mimamsa. And the Mimamsa one is like kind of the most confusing and trickiest one for me to understand. But it is sort of like how to investigate and analyze and how to gain truth through the proper way of investigating and analyzing everything. And it sort of is actually the in-between, I would say, of the outer and external. And then the Yoga and Vedanta are the truly internal ways of seeing truth. And these are the ones that you guys know already about. Yoga, I really don't need to say much about that. You already know what that is, most likely. But it is a path of finding truth through union with your higher self. And then Vedanta is about... just the name of Vedanta is the coolest part of it, as usual with most Sanskrit names. Anta means end. So it's the end of the Vedas, or the summation, the completion of them all. So it's almost like Veda is also knowledge. So it's like going beyond just knowledge, going beyond all these into the transcendent and into the mystical. That's kind of what you have to do eventually. These other 5 will still have their limitations. So this is really cool because if you take time to contemplate this and meditate over this and take some notes on this class, you'll just get a better grasp of like how to think about reality. You really will, and how to think about truth. And, you'll be like, oh yeah, let's go back to logic. Let's logically think about this. And then if I get stuck there, let's investigate. Let's do Mimamsa more. If I get stuck there, let's just do yoga and meditate on it. You know what I mean? Or whatever. Like there's just these different ways where you can kind of work through something. And then here's where it gets really cool is as astrologers, the Jaimini Sutras, which I've been teaching at really in depth on my Patreon course, doing like a whole hour or more on just one sutra that he did on one sign, because that's how deep these sutras are, the real Jaimini stuff. Jaimini actually has a section where he talks about the intelligence of the Grahas and what type of intelligence they have. And he lists how the planets relate to these different darshanas. So that's really cool because that like tells us so much more. This is an ancient text, this Jaimini text. So this is actually linking us up to these ancient philosophies and giving us the planetary anchor that they're anchored by. And we know these planets well. So since we know these planets well and what they're anchored to, we actually know these philosophies very well. And as a jyotishi, even if you never were to be taught about Mimamsa from a formal Mimamsa guru, you'll still know a lot about it because Mimamsa is ruled by Mercury, or it's the mercurial intelligence. So let's go into that part of it. So as a Vedic astrologer, you're gonna really be able to use this, and then understanding this knowledge, this is how you want to think about astrology. This is basically your framework for how you want to know if you're actually finding the truth in your astrology research or not. Because, like, man, it is frustrating how many people are studying astrology in a non-scientific and non-systematic way, and so thus getting nowhere. And in Vedic astrology is just notorious for that. Like, this is why a lot of the rest of the world won't take us seriously. Like, you look at Lahiri Mahashaya. I just had someone comment about this, and I'm not in no way trying to... They left a very respectful comment, so there's in no way trying to critique you if you were listening. But it's just a thing that I thought about sharing the comment. Is like, there's just so many things to share. But it's like Lahiri himself didn't even like his Lahiri Mahashaya. He wanted to change that later on because his friend got stung by a bee on one day and not the other day. Like, that is that literally your level of logic? Is that your level of Nyaya, like, thinking is, oh, my friend got stung by a bee on this day and not that day, then everything needs to change? And it's like, Lahiri Mahashaya never really went through a peer review process of rishis or gurus or anything like that. It was just the government picked that, and the Indian government just wanted everyone to do their holidays at the same time. And so everyone just picked that one to make all the festivals happen at the same time to make the government run smoother. But if you know anything about Indian government or governments in general, they're usually not aligned with truth in general. Watch my Capricorn Swampsha video to learn more about that and why that is. But I don't want to do the astrology that the Indian government does. Let's just put it that way, okay? So there are lots of, like, times when, Vedic astrology was really only being done by, like, New Age hippies until the last 10 or 15 years, maybe, if that. And so there's a lot more critical thinking that needs to be involved in it, but it needs to be done in a systematic way. And the Vedas, like, the rishis have already shown us these 6 systems of finding out the truth. So, Sankhya philosophy, let's talk about that a little bit more. Sankhya philosophy, this one is ruled by the moon. The Sankhya philosophy is ruled by the moon. Actually, Jaimini connects it to the moon. And this is so cool because the Sankhya philosophy shows the processes of cosmic manifestation and how everything came from the infinite God. And, how, like, the gunas are created, and then mind is created, and then, the 5 elements are created, and then da-da-da-da, and it goes all the way down. I learned about Sankhya philosophy when I got initiated into Kriya Yoga, and it was, a very big part of Kriya Yoga. It was like, you should meditate on this, and you should think on this when you're in meditation. And it was so funny, because if you see these images, these Sankhya diagrams and stuff, they're very confusing and they make no sense at first. And that's exactly what my guru Roy Eugene Davis told me. He was like, it'll make no sense at first, and then just keep meditating on it, and in time you'll just start to have insights about it, and it will just, like, make sense for you how the cosmos came to be. And this actually is true, and I experienced this myself, where, like, as a young 21-year-old, I was like, oh, I don't understand what any of these crazy Sanskrit jargon words mean. And maybe that's how I sound to you right now, but keep meditating and contemplating it, and you'll mentally digest all these concepts, and you'll get wonderful insights. The moon is the planet of growth. The moon is the planet that waxes and wanes and grows everything on the earth. And so it has to do with the phases of development, and it has to do with the philosophy of growth. And so if you have the moon with your Atmakaraka, or in the 5th, 2nd, 3rd, or 5th from your Atmakaraka, you will have a Sankhya type moon-like intelligence, actually, and appreciate this sort of thing. And in my personal opinion, God Speaks is the best modern day source of Sankhya information. I have this book right here, God Speaks. No one can read that book and not, like, be convinced that God is real and that everything in creation is God, and that the person who wrote it was one with God too, because it's written with the authority of, like, I feel like God is talking to me. So Yeah, check out that book, God Speaks, if you want to. Like, really, if you know anyone who's an intellectual type of person who really needs an intellectual thing to prove that God exists, that book. There's no one whose intellect can overcome that book. Let's put it that way. In like a chess match type thing, that book is insane. Nyaya. All right, so now let's go to the Nyaya philosophy. Nyaya is ruled by Mars. Jaimini tells us that if Mars is in your first, second, third, or fifth from your Atmakarka, you'll have the Nyayika logical philosophy. So this is so cool. And Mars rules scientists. Mars and Saturn make one a scientist. So again, these were the original scientists, and Mars rules this darshan. So this is about obtaining knowledge through observation and just critical thinking, and just logically observing reality. And more so, again, like the Vaisheshika is about observing reality, but this is about how to think about it, which is, again, logic. Logic is really lacking in the astrology world. It's gotten better and better, but it's still lacking in both Western and Vedic astrology worlds. Sri Yukteswar, this man right here, he said that if a spiritual concept is not logical, it's not true. Period. End of story. And if an astrological concept is not logical, it's probably not true. End of story. I'm here to tell you that. Just, that's it. All Vedic astrology is based on logic. It sounds superstitious, but then when you study all these things, it actually becomes very logical. So that's the thing, is the truth can be objectively proven, and the Nyaya philosophy says this. And they have a word, prahana is the word for proof, I believe. And this path deals with these same 9 substances that are found in the Vaisheshika path, which we'll explain in a moment. But it deals more with, again, like how to be critical, how to be logical, how to think about them. Now, the Vaisheshika. Now let's move on to this one. So, wait. Let me say one more thing about Nyaya. So, it's a cool way, if you get into the Nyayika philosophy, it's a cool way to just like think about everything. Like, for example, there are 4 sources of valid knowledge. Pratyaksha, which means perception, just perceiving. Inferring, which is anumana, so inferring. That's very important. As astrologers, the Shastras only tell us a certain amount of things, but we must logically infer a lot of other things from those sutras. So sometimes we are told in a sutra, like pratyaksha, like clearly perceiving a rope to be a rope and not a snake, right? Or whatever, or clearly perceiving, oh, I read in the sutras, Mars rules the Nyaya philosophy, Mars is logic. Okay, clearly perceiving. After that, I may need to infer a lot of other things about this philosophy from knowing that, and that would be the anumana. Or in Ayurveda, we're always using this. Where there is inflammation, there is pitta, So in astrology, as jyotishis, we need to be like that all the time too. Like, where there's a Mars-Saturn conjunction, there's going to be an accident, and there's going to be inflammation there, right? Where Mercury is, there's going to be some skill this person has. So you need to use the anumana, the inference, all the time as a jyotishi. You're all the time using this. This is why having strong Mars is very good if you're a Vedic astrologer, even though it may be hated on by other astrologers you've learned about. Upamana. Upamana is comparison. It's like how just above I just compared Pratyaksha and Anumana. Like, we do this so much, it's natural, we don't even notice it. It's something we all do without even thinking about in Jyotish, but when you compare charts, when you look at compatibility, when you compare your chart and the transits, you're doing this Upamana. This is one of the things I put in my notes. When I was studying the Nakshatra course, I started to just Upamana, I started to just compare how a person behaved with Ketu in a nakshatra versus someone who had Rahu in the nakshatra, and saw the difference and the extremes and the truth of that nakshatra as a result. So then you have Shabda, valid testimony. Okay, so that's just like actual valid testimony from people that you know to know, like gurus and things like this, you know? Authoritative spiritual texts and shastras like Jaimini Sutras just tells us things. So that's the valid testimony of people. When it comes to Vedic astrology, we don't even realize how much we're relying on Shabda. Like, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, you know, like Jaimini and Parash. None of this stuff I made up, you know, so I'm just going off of valid testimony. And if I wasn't, I'd have to start way at the bottom. So that's an important one. Another angle of Shabda as a jyotishi is you need to learn to trust the valid testimony of the client. You know what I mean? Of course, sometimes clients will be deceiving themselves or you, but you need to overall trust the valid testimony of the client and trust their experience and not be seduced by your own experience. For example, Kriya yoga meditation worked great for me, but I don't think every single person needs to do that. Meher Baba is a crazy guru, but he works for me, but I rarely ever advocate him for other clients, you know, because I'm not trying to be seduced by my own experience, basically. That's one of the major problems that most counselors, most clients, most healers have, most psychologists have. Psychologists want to put you on meds because that's what, or psychiatric. Anyways, certain people want to put you on meds because that's what they were trained to do. That's their testimony. You know, Chinese medicine doctors want to get you to eat meat and eat Chinese herbs, you know what I mean? Because Chinese people can't digest lactose and milk as well. You know, so they may get a woman and try to get her eating meat when she really doesn't need to be eating meat necessarily. It might be other things that she needs to be consuming. But we have to, like, basically not be too seduced by our own experience and trust the testimony of our clients and of the wise, you know, gurus and sages. But, like, if your client says they did this, we must believe them and listen patiently and at least follow up on their experience, because sometimes it doesn't even seem like, sometimes a client might have everything and be like rich and loaded, and you're like, I don't believe you know what I mean? You can't get into their shoes, but you need to be able to come down to their level or go up to their level or wherever they're at to be a good counselor. So yeah, and then there are 3 non-valid sources of knowledge, which is doubt, faulty cognition, and hypothetical argument. And I love how they include hypothetical arguments, because in the Western philosophies, they're always loving to get into these like made up hypothetical arguments for like the sake of it, you know, and they're not staying really that logical or grounded in what's really real. Like higher level math stuff in the Western world is just like wasting time trying to like hypothetically figure things out that, you know, maybe they should just help us out in the astrology world more so. Okay, so now the Vaisheshika philosophy. Vaisheshika means to specify the important aspects of concrete reality. And that's exactly what it's about. So the Vaisheshika is interesting. Jaimini does not mention this one, and he does not relate it to a planet. But if you logically infer, if you use Nyaya, you can realize that this is definitely the Saturnian intelligence, the Saturnian philosophy. And Saturn deals with the most objective, like nature, just the concrete reality. And he rules the earth chakra, you know, just down here on the physical earth realm. So this is the philosophy of understanding physics, basically. And, you know, Saturn ruled people do get into physics also, just as a side note. Okay. So this one goes together with Mars's darshan, like I was saying. Nyaya and Vaisheshika come together. These were the original scientists, and Saturn and Mars in your swamsha or in a chart together does show up for scientists all the time. And so it is the most objective, and it deals with these 9 causative substances of the universe. The Nava Karna Dravya, I believe it's called. And I'm sure these 9 causative substances also relate to the 9 grahas, but I haven't studied it deeply enough to tell you with authority what that is. But the 9 substances are basically the 5 elements plus kala, time, soul, direction, and mind. Wait, and what was... Yeah. Wait. I'm sorry. So the Vaisheshika deals with 9 causative substances, which is basically the 5 elements, and then it's plus time, soul, dig or direction, which is similar to space, but directionality of space, and then manas or mind. And so those are the 9. 5 elements plus those. And this is really everything kind of can fall into that category of what causes things. These are really the 9 things that cause everything, and I'm sure that they're related to the grahas. Karna means causative, dravya means substances, so the nava, karna, dravya are the 9 causative substances, and these are kind of what are also holding the universe all together. And this system also was really the original system that taught about the idea of atoms, even because it talked about how the entire universe is composed of atoms. And it said this way before, Europeans or whatever. And it considers the union and the separation of atoms to be the will of the divine, which is really cool. So again, even though this is what you would think of as a dry, cold, scientific darshana, it's still theistic and still saying there's a supreme being behind all this, because that really is the most logical thing, right? And even all the greatest scientific minds really felt that way too, when you read about them and their lives. So I will leave the rest of the Vaisheshika stuff alone, but it's all about the particular distinctness of each aspect of concrete reality and dissecting it and separating it. So it's literally just physics and science, but just the original form of it. So I think that that's really cool. So we are also, everything about jyotish and Hinduism is in line with science. It makes sense that this would be the Saturnian type of intelligence. So if you have Saturn with your Atmakaraka, or in the 2nd, 3rd, or 5th, you may have an appreciation for this type of intelligence and darshana. And then what's the Mimamsa is, like I said, it's really the one that has to do with mostly just investigating and analyzing the truth. So this is the one that's related to Mercury. And it's kind of like how Mercury is the messenger of the gods and deals with both external and internal. This is why I see the Mimamsa as being a philosophy of more of the internal, but sort of the bridge between the external and internal. And Mercury rules the intelligence of investigation, of just research and investigating and analyzing everything. And let's just nitpick and zoom in with our little magnifying glass is Mercury. And that's what Mimamsakas are always doing. And so if you have Mercury in your ascendant, with your Atmakaraka, or in the 2nd, 3rd, or 5th, you will be a Mimamsaka according to Jaimini and have the intelligence of investigation, and in Mercury. And I've found this to be very true. I have Mercury with my Atmakaraka and my Rashi chart, and quite a curious investigator, I would say. This is something that we constantly use as well, like Google. If you have a strong Mercury, you're going to have 20 Google search tabs open at any given moment on your computer, probably, because you're curious and you're investigating. And this one, there's a separation where certain Mimamsa schools use the Vedas as their authority and certain ones use the Upanishads as their authority. And because it's very ancient, it goes back that far where a lot of these texts weren't even written yet. Um, but yeah, it's basically just the way to understand truth by just thorough investigation and analysis. And they also have like different rules and different ways of, and like tips and guidelines for how to investigate and research, which are good. Okay, so now the last two are the ones you guys already know very well, Yoga and Vedanta. Funny thing is, Jaimini does not correlate either of these to Grahas as well. So I think that he knew that we were intelligent enough to figure out what these other ones were about if he just gave a few of them. So if you know that Moon is the Sankhya one, you know that Mars is the Nyaya one, you know that Mercury is the Mimamsa one, there's only 3 other planets to fit in: Saturn, Jupiter, and Venus, okay? Because you don't need to fit the sun in. When there's a 6th category, you would only use Mars or Sun because they're both fire element. So we've already used Mars, so we know he doesn't want us to use Sun for any of these. It's going to be either, so yeah, Saturn's obviously was the Vaisheshika one, so it's either going to be Venus or Jupiter ruling Yoga or Vedanta. Well, I'm pretty sure Venus rules Yoga, because Yoga is about union. Well, what is Venus? About harmony and union of relationships, you know what I mean, and balance. And also because when the yoga path is kind of a more worldly path of spirituality, because it's all about focusing on your body, and you end up developing a lot of powers, which is related to Venus. Venus is the one who has like the siddhis and these powers, like to raise the dead, as you may know, the Sanjivini Vidya. Venus is able to raise the dead, do other things. Venus represents the heart chakra. The heart chakra is where you really get psychic abilities, and you need to be very careful how you use them, and because then you can fall from a height if you don't use them properly. And so yoga is associated, like basically, like yoga actually doesn't fully get you there. It can still get you in this rajasic power, like Venus kind of stage of being enthralled with the desires and still pursuing your desires. Vedanta is only the only one where you truly go beyond your desires and go beyond everything. And so that's the Jupiter one, because Jupiter is the planet that is the most vast and transcendent. And that's why he rules the last sign of the zodiac, of going beyond everything at Pisces, right? So Vedanta is the end of knowledge, the most mystical, and thus it is the most Jupiterian one, right? So while with these two, I don't feel I need to speak as much about, but yoga, obviously yoga helps us all as astrologers to experience union with the divine, and really all this knowledge is within us already. And so the more we have union with the divine, the more the divine knowledge will just flow out clearly and perfectly. And so yoga is, of course, one of the ways of seeing reality, because reality is actually all just one thing. And there are all these different branches within yoga, right? And they all kind of fit into this. So if you have Venus as your Atmakaraka, or with your Atmakaraka, or in the 2nd, 3rd, or 5th, you may do yoga, and you may have appreciation for the Yoga Darshana. And then if it's Jupiter in the same houses, it would be Vedanta, and it would be an appreciation for the most mystical aspects of the truth, the most transcendent aspects of the truth, and of going beyond even systems themselves, right? And structures and things like that. And so that fits with Jupiter. So basically, yeah, this is the Shad Darshana. These are the 6 ways of viewing truth and viewing reality that everyone, that the ancient Hindus were very big on, but is not talked about much in the modern day, like, culture. And this is part of this course. It's mostly a jyotish course, but part of this course is to give you guys an understanding of the philosophy and round you out as astrologers and as custodians of the dharma. You need to know what these words mean and have a greater overall grasp and appreciation of the vastness of the yogic culture, we could say. And now, if you enjoyed that, please like and subscribe, and consider joining my Patreon. $33 a month and you get access to all my Vedic astrology courses, a lot of huge back catalog of stuff, and you get a monthly forecast. My May forecast is already up, and you get I also have a financial astrology level for $44 a month, and you get a monthly cryptocurrency market forecast, and you get access to all my financial astrology courses as well. So I strongly recommend doing that. And then, you also get discounted rates on tutoring, one-on-one tutoring. So it is just, I really you can't find a better deal of learning astrology than that, in my opinion. And so I encourage people to join that and study that. And I'd love to have this year get, a number of more serious quality students. If you really want to be able to do Vedic astrology, you can train with me, and in a year or two of taking these courses and then meeting like every 2 weeks or once a month, having an hour-long tutoring session or 2 hours or more, the more the better, really. You will be a really good astrologer after a year or two of that. And then you'll be able to, help people out at a really high level. And it's a great job. It's great to be able to do what you love to do and actually heal others. So I just really want to train more teachers. I mean, I'm not trying to teach students. I'm trying to teach teachers who will go on and share more of this. There is, at this point, a lot of knowledge I've got to get out there, and a lot of knowledge is dying every day in India, and so we need more and more of the youth too to step up and start learning this stuff. So if that interests you, please consider joining my Patreon, or if you just like this video, please buy me a coffee. It means a lot. It's very helpful. I've literally only had 2 people do that in my entire history of YouTubing, so it will be recognized and it will be appreciated. If you want to just buy me a coffee, there's a link below. And thank you so much. Namaste. Jai Baba.